There's a stark difference between appearing rich and actually building wealth. Most people spend their entire lives trying to convince others they've succeeded, while those who are truly financially dangerous operate in silence. They understand something Machiavelli observed centuries ago: exposed power attracts attacks. And this applies to both politics and money. Someone buys a car beyond their means, posts quotes about success, tries to prove their worth all the time, but behind the scenes, they live under pressure, in debt, and emotionally dependent on the approval of others. Meanwhile, someone almost invisible, without the need for public validation, is accumulating assets, creating reserves, studying markets, and silently strengthening their position. Politics guided by reality, not ideals. That's the logic. The world rewards appearances in the short term, but rewards strategy in the long term. And most people never realize this because they've been trained to consume, not to build. It's as if there's an invisible theater happening all the time. Ordinary people trying to appear extraordinary, and extraordinary people pretending to be ordinary. The detail is that only one of these groups truly sleeps peacefully, because real wealth isn't aesthetic, it's structure, it's freedom, it's the power of choice. And the sooner someone understands that, the sooner they stop playing the game of appearances. The curious thing is that almost no one talks about this honestly, because there's an entire industry profiting from people's anxiety. Social media has transformed ostentation into a universal language. Today, many people measure success by what they can show, not by what they can sustain. And this creates a dangerous psychological trap. Individuals begin to make financial decisions based on invisible applause. They buy a cell phone to impress someone who doesn't even like them. They take on debt to appear sophisticated. They frequent expensive places to take pictures, not because it improves their lives. Machiavelli would say this is strategic weakness, better to be feared than loved. But above all, avoid being hated. And those who flaunt too much awaken exactly two things: envy and expectation. People start to expect more from them. The pressure increases, freedom disappears. The silent man, on the other hand, manages to move unnoticed. He understands the appearance of virtue. He seems ordinary. He seems predictable. He even seems underestimated. Meanwhile, he's building wealth like someone planting trees in secret. And here's something important. Invisible wealth doesn't mean living miserably. It means living with intention. A financially savvy person might drive a simple car for years while quietly buying Apple, Microsoft, or global ETF stock, not because they're stingy, but because they understand the game. And the game changes completely when someone realizes that money isn't just for buying things. Money buys time, it buys silence, it buys emotional autonomy, it buys distance from toxic people, it buys the ability to say no. But this requires a mindset that almost no one develops. Because from a young age, they were taught that wealth is a symbol, not a tool. They were taught to admire those who seem powerful, not those who truly have control over their own lives. The end justifies the means, but almost everyone chooses emotionally impulsive means and then wonders why they never get anywhere. The truly strategic operate differently. They study real human nature. They observe patterns. They understand virtù and fortuna. They know that luck favors those who are prepared when opportunity arises. That's why they build in silence. They learn valuable skills. They create reserves. They develop constant adaptability. And perhaps the most uncomfortable part of all this is realizing that most people don't want real wealth. They just want the temporary feeling of seeming important. But there's an invisible principle that separates those who accumulate power from those who accumulate anxiety. And that's exactly where the next layer of this game begins. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. There's a reason why the most financially dangerous men rarely seem dangerous. They've understood an old rule of power. The less attention you attract, the more freedom you have to grow. The problem is that most do the exact opposite. As soon as they make a little more money, they feel the need to announce it to the world. They change cars too early, change their behavior, start buying status symbols, and turn their lives into a walking billboard. But this creates invisible vulnerabilities, because visible wealth awakens curiosity, demands comparison and exploitation. Machiavelli observed that decisions based on real human nature are always more effective than decisions guided by ego. And human nature reacts to apparent success almost automatically. Some become envious, others try to take advantage. Some start asking for favors, others want to test their strength. That's why the true financial strategist learns to operate under the radar. The phantom principle doesn't mean living hidden like a monk on a mountain. It means understanding that discretion is armor. The man who doesn't need to prove anything moves with much more intelligence. Because while others expend energy sustaining characters, he uses energy to quietly build wealth. This becomes even more evident when one begins to analyze how truly wealthy people behave away from the cameras. Many billionaires live absurdly ordinary lives compared to their wealth. Warren Buffett lived for decades in the same house he bought in the 1950s. Not because he lacked money, but because he understands that capital must work to generate more capital. There is a gigantic difference between spending to impress and spending strategically. The emotional person buys an expensive watch to feel a sense of belonging. The strategic person buys stakes in companies, productive assets, or knowledge that increases their ability to generate wealth in the future. Politics guided by reality, not ideals. The problem is that almost no one teaches this directly. On the contrary, the entire system pushes people towards financial ostentation. It's as if there's a silent pressure saying, if you won, prove it. And those who fall into this trap become hostages of their own image. They begin to need to maintain an artificial standard to continue receiving validation. That's where many go bankrupt, even when earning well, because their wealth depends on the perception of others, not on the structure they built. The phantom principle breaks exactly that logic. It transforms discretion into a competitive advantage. And that completely changes the way someone moves in the world. In practice, this requires something rare, emotional self-control, because often individuals grow financially before developing the psychological maturity to handle it. And that's when the charade begins. They want to show results too early. They want to seem important too early. They want to be admired too early. Machiavelli would call this a strategic error. The calculated use of force includes knowing when not to demonstrate power. Think of someone who starts earning more. Instead of rushing to increase expenses, this person could create a robust emergency fund, invest in global assets like VOO or IVV, learn a scalable skill like video editing, copywriting, or sales, and maintain a seemingly ordinary lifestyle for a few years. It seems simple, but almost no one can do it because the ego craves immediate recognition. And this is exactly where the game starts to get interesting, because when someone learns to disappear socially while growing financially, they create something extremely powerful: silent mobility. The person ceases to be predictable, they cease to be easily understood, and little by little they begin to build an invisible fortress that doesn't depend on applause. But to protect this structure, it will need to eliminate another, even greater danger: financial dependence. Most people believe that financial security means earning well, but that's a dangerous illusion. Security doesn't come from the size of your income. It comes from the number of dependencies you can eliminate. A doctor can earn $50,000 a month and still be vulnerable. A businessman can make a lot of money and still live in panic, because ultimately everything depends on a single cog continuing to function. And when an entire person depends on only one source of income, they lack freedom. They possess fragility masked as stability. Machiavelli understood this perfectly when he spoke about having one's own loyal armies. Whoever depends on the army of others is always vulnerable to betrayal. It works the same way with money. If someone's entire survival depends on a single boss, a single company, or a single client, that person has placed their own destiny in the hands of others. The principle of fortitude is born precisely to destroy this invisible vulnerability, because real wealth isn't just about accumulating money. It's about building systems capable of continuing to function even when one part fails. And this completely changes someone's psychological posture. The person stops acting out of fear and starts acting strategically. It seems like a detail, but it's a brutal transformation. The curious thing is that building multiple income streams has never been more possible today. The problem isn't a lack of opportunity, it's an excess of distraction. People want results too quickly. They want to appear successful before building a solid foundation. And then they end up trapped in dangerous emotional cycles. Someone gets a raise and immediately increases their standard of living. They buy more expenses, they take on more installments, they create more pressure. Instead of transforming extra income into assets, they transform it into liabilities, a policy guided by reality, not ideals. The financial strategist does the opposite. They understand that each new source of income reduces a little of the invisible fear that controls most people. A practical example: someone working a traditional job can start by creating a second monetizable skill. They can learn video editing to serve international clients. They can study copywriting. They can build a YouTube channel. They can sell digital products. They can invest in real estate funds like HGLG11 or KNCR11 to generate recurring cash flow. They can buy global ETFs and reinvest dividends. Small, separate streams seem insignificant at first, but together they create something extremely powerful: resilience. And financial resilience generates a feeling that few experience: the ability to breathe without constant fear. But there's an even deeper layer to this principle. Multiple incomes aren't just about making more money, they serve to protect the mind. Because a financially dependent person becomes emotionally manipulable, they accept humiliation, they tolerate toxic environments, they allow silent abuse because they feel they have no choice. Better to be feared than loved, but before that, it's necessary to stop being controlled by the fear of scarcity. The person who builds a financial fortress begins to change, even in the way they speak, negotiate, and position themselves. They don't need to beg for opportunities. They don't need to desperately accept any condition. And this completely alters how others perceive them. The irony is that the less needy someone seems, the more value the world sees in that person. Virtù and fortuna go hand in hand here, because financial luck rarely favors those who are constantly putting out fires. It favors those who have built enough structure to recognize opportunities when they appear. And as this fortress begins to grow, an inevitable question arises. If wealth depends so much on strategy, why do so many people continue to waste money trying to appear rich? There's something almost offensive to the human ego about the idea of voluntarily appearing ordinary. Because most people have been conditioned to believe that improving one's life means immediately displaying visible signs of it. But the truly strategic understand something uncomfortable. Wealth is born much more from the intelligent retention of money than from its ostentatious display, and this is exactly where the art of the mundane comes in. The financially dangerous man learns to live below his means, not out of limitation, but out of strategy. He understands that every impulsive expense steals a part of his future freedom. While many people use money to fuel momentary emotion, he uses money to build long-term power. Machiavelli spoke of constant adaptability, and few skills require more emotional adaptation than resisting the social pressure of consumption, because the whole world tries to convince someone that spending is rewarding. But it almost never talks about the invisible cost of that, the cost of financial anxiety, the cost of dependence, the cost of needing to keep running eternally just to maintain an image. The average man buys things to appear important. The strategist buys assets to become free. They seem similar on the outside, but they are completely different universes on the inside. And here's something curious. The more someone understands money, the less need they feel to appear rich, because they begin to see the hidden value of strategic simplicity. A person can wear discreet clothes, drive a reliable car, and still possess a financial structure that would shock many luxurious people. Politics guided by reality, not ideals. The problem is that modern consumption has been transformed into emotional anesthesia. People buy when they are sad, frustrated, insecure, or wanting to belong. And this creates a brutal cycle. The more emotionally empty they are, the more they spend trying to fill something internal. The strategist perceives this game and begins to act differently. Instead of changing their cell phone every year, they invest in knowledge. Perhaps they read The Intelligent Investor, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or The Psychology of Money. Instead of financing status, they buy productive assets. Perhaps they build positions in Nvidia, global ETFs, or even create their own digital operation. And the most interesting thing is that, in the beginning, nobody notices any difference. On the outside, they seem normal, but on the inside, they are silently accumulating the capacity for choice. And freedom of choice is a form of power that few people can understand until they experience it. But the art of the mundane isn't just about saving money. It's about building psychological resilience against social manipulation. Because excessive consumption almost always stems from comparison. The individual sees someone displaying achievements and feels the need to keep up, as if trapped in an invisible competition where no one truly wins. Machiavelli observed that the appearance of virtue often matters more socially than real virtue. And today, this has become an entire market. People display financed wealth, performative happiness, and superficial success while drowning in pressure. The strategic man does the opposite. He protects his peace by feigning normalcy. Avoiding being hated also means avoiding attracting unnecessary attention. And there's a silent advantage to this. Those who appear ordinary can observe more, learn more, and move without resistance. It's almost like playing chess while others are distracted, trying to appear like kings on the board. But at some point, saving money and living strategically ceases to be enough, because true wealth begins when money works on its own, without directly depending on the owner's presence. There comes a point when a person realizes an uncomfortable truth. Working more doesn't necessarily create wealth. In fact, it often only creates sophisticated fatigue. Most people have been taught to trade time for money as if that were the pinnacle of financial intelligence. Work more hours, make more effort, endure more pressure, but there's an inevitable physical limit to that. The day still has 24 hours, even for the most disciplined person on the planet. And that's exactly why the truly wealthy think differently. They don't just focus on effort, they focus on leverage. Machiavelli understood the calculated use of force, and in the financial world, leverage is exactly that. Using systems, technology, capital, and people to multiply results without depending exclusively on one's own physical energy. The average person sells hours. The strategist builds mechanisms. While one eternally chases the next paycheck, the other creates structures that continue to generate value, even while they sleep. It seems like an exaggeration, until someone realizes how great fortunes were actually built. It wasn't just with hard work, it was with control over scalable systems, and this perception completely changes the way someone views money, career, and freedom. The curious thing is that almost no one realizes this early on, because society romanticizes visible effort. The exhausted man seems admirable, the tranquil man seems suspicious, but wealth rarely arises from continuous wear and tear. It arises from the ability to multiply impact. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. A simple example, an extremely competent doctor can earn very well by seeing patients in person, but they will still be limited by their own time. Someone who creates a company, a digital platform, software, a media channel, or a scalable operation, however, can decouple part of their income from constant physical presence. This is where many begin to understand the power of digital. A YouTube video continues to generate revenue after it's published. An e-book can sell while the author sleeps. An e-commerce operation continues to function without continuous supervision. An investment portfolio generates dividends without requiring proportional daily effort. Companies like Amazon, Meta Platforms, or Alphabet became wealthy because they built systems that scale infinitely faster than isolated human effort. And when someone understands this deeply, they begin to stop thinking only about how much can I earn working, and then asks, what can I build that will continue to function without me? But there's a dangerous trap here. Many people hear about passive income and imagine it's easy, but the truth is almost the opposite. Building leverage requires intense work at the beginning. It requires strategic vision. It requires enduring periods where the result still seems small. Machiavelli spoke of virtù and fortuna. Luck helps, but it usually favors those who have already created a structure to capture it. The strategic man works hard at the beginning to reduce mandatory work in the future. He plants systems while others just run in circles. And perhaps the most powerful part of this is psychological. When income ceases to depend exclusively on time, fear begins to diminish. The person regains mental space. They can think better. They negotiate better. They live with less despair, and this even alters their social perception. Because desperate men transmit fragility, men who have systems working silently carry a calmness that is difficult to explain. Better to be feared than loved, and nothing scares the system more than someone who doesn't depend on it emotionally to survive. But there is something even more powerful than automated money. Building strategic relationships that silently accelerate everything. Most people believe that power comes from quantity, more followers, more contacts, more visibility, more superficial networking, but truly influential men know that wealth rarely comes from crowds, it comes from the right connections. The silent network principle destroys the modern idea that popularity is synonymous with value, because it isn't. In practice, many of the most connected individuals in the world have extremely small circles. And this happens for a simple reason. Deep relationships produce exponential opportunities. Shallow relationships produce only social noise. Machiavelli perfectly understood the importance of having one's own loyal armies. And in the modern world, loyalty is worth more than reach. A person can have 100,000 followers and still not be able to call anyone when they really need strategic help, while another with half a dozen solid contacts can silently open gigantic financial doors. Politics guided by reality, not ideals. The world likes to sell the fantasy of performative networking, crowded events, exchanged business cards, artificial conversations. But true wealth usually circulates in much more discreet environments. Environments where trust weighs more than exposure. And those who understand this begin to treat relationships as rare assets, not as social statistics. The curious thing is that financially savvy people rarely try to impress excessively, because they know that high-value connections are born more from perceived competence than from desperate self-promotion. The strategic person learns to listen more than they speak. They observe patterns. They understand interests. They create real utility for others, and this generates something extremely powerful, a silent reputation. A video editor who delivers above-average results naturally attracts better clients. A doctor who solves difficult problems builds authority without needing to shout. A trustworthy entrepreneur receives opportunities even before seeking them. Machiavelli spoke of the appearance of virtue, but he also understood that strategic trust is an invisible currency. And here's an important detail. The right relationships accelerate wealth in an absurd way. Often, a single conversation changes entire years of someone's financial trajectory. A simple example? A content creator who knows a good copywriter can transform an ordinary channel into a sales machine. An entrepreneur connected to the right suppliers drastically reduces costs. An investor close to experienced people avoids million-dollar mistakes. Companies like PayPal practically arose from a silent network of highly competent people who continued to create billion-dollar businesses together afterward. And this reveals an uncomfortable truth. Opportunities rarely circulate publicly first. They circulate among trusted people. But building this kind of network requires something rare today: strategic patience. Because deep connections aren't born from desperate self-interest. They're born from consistency, value, and discretion. The emotional individual only approaches when they need something. The strategist builds relationships before the need exists. Better to be feared than loved, but above all to be silently respected. And real respect isn't bought with appearances. It's earned over time. The intelligent person understands that every wrong relationship also has an invisible cost. Negative people drain energy. Impulsive people create problems. Envious people silently sabotage. That's why the silent network doesn't grow quickly. It grows selectively. It's almost like assembling an invisible council of strategic allies around one's own life. And as this network strengthens, something interesting happens. The individual begins to realize that wealth isn't just accumulated money. It's the ability to build systems, relationships, and structures that continue to function even without their constant presence. And that's exactly where the next stage of the game emerges, becoming dispensable even to one's own empire. There's a question almost no one dares to ask themselves. If I stop today, will my financial life continue to function, or will everything crumble? This question separates well-paid workers from truly free people, because many people seem rich until the moment they stop producing. From then on, the entire castle begins to crack. The autonomous engine is born precisely from the idea of eliminating this invisible dependence. The ultimate goal of wealth is not to work eternally under high pressure. It's to build systems that survive without requiring constant presence. Machiavelli understood something fundamental about power. Those who depend too much on their own physical strength eventually lose their advantage. The calculated use of force includes creating mechanisms that continue to operate even when the leader isn't looking. With money, it works the same way. The average person transforms their life into a machine that needs them 24 hours a day. The strategist builds a machine capable of functioning on its own, and this completely changes their relationship with time, anxiety, and freedom. Because for the first time, money ceases to be just about survival and begins to transform into real autonomy. The curious thing is that many people spend decades building businesses, careers, or entire operations without realizing they've created a sophisticated prison for themselves. They earn well, but can't travel without taking work with them. They can't rest without anxiety. They can't be absent without everything grinding to a halt. Politics guided by reality, not ideals. Society calls this success. But strategically, this is still dependency. The autonomous engine demands a different mindset. It requires someone to start thinking like an architect, not just an operator. A smart entrepreneur builds strong teams. A content creator builds video libraries that continue to generate revenue. An investor builds a diversified portfolio that automatically produces cash flow. An e-commerce owner automates customer service, logistics, and processes. Companies like Netflix or Spotify grow because their systems continue to operate at scale without directly depending on a single person manually operating every detail. And perhaps this is one of the quietest forms of wealth, building something that continues to live even when you're not present. Because true freedom isn't just about making money, it's about regaining control over your own time. But there's a deep psychological layer here. Many people fear becoming dispensable because they confuse usefulness with identity. They feel the need to be at the center of everything to feel important. And this creates a cruel paradox. The more indispensable someone becomes operationally, the less free they become existentially. Machiavelli spoke of constant adaptability, and few adaptations are more difficult than learning to relinquish absolute control. The intelligent strategist understands that their role is not to do everything forever. It's to build something strong enough to continue without them. Think of someone who creates a company where every process depends exclusively on their memory. This seems like power at the beginning, but becomes a weakness in the long run. Now, compare that to someone who documents systems, trains people, and creates autonomous structures. One builds sophisticated chaos, the other builds legacy. And the most interesting thing is that when someone finally reaches this level of autonomy, a new silent challenge arises, protecting all of this without attracting unnecessary attention, because too much visible wealth turns freedom into a target. And that's exactly why the truly powerful learn to master not only money, but also the perception others have of them. Few people understand that wealth doesn't just need to be built, it needs to be protected. And one of the smartest ways to protect it is to control how the world perceives you. The strategically powerful man rarely appears threatening. He understands something profoundly Machiavellian. Underestimated people move with much more freedom. The war of perception arises precisely from this. While many use money to attract attention, the strategist uses ordinary appearance to neutralize invisible risks. Because excessively exposed wealth awakens dangerous forces of real human nature: envy, comparison, resentment, and opportunism. Machiavelli observed that avoiding being hated is as important as gaining power, and those who flaunt their wealth excessively end up arousing silent hostility even in those close to them. Friends begin to compete. Family members create expectations. Acquaintances begin to observe every move. Suddenly, wealth ceases to generate freedom and begins to produce constant social surveillance. The intelligent man realizes this early on. That's why he learns to appear accessible, simple, and even predictable. Not because he is weak, but because he understands that discretion reduces friction, and reducing friction allows for silent growth. While others compete for attention, he protects his position. The curious thing is that most people fall into emotional traps precisely because they crave too much recognition. They want to appear successful before consolidating their own structure, and this generates a dangerous effect. The more someone tries to prove their worth externally, the more emotionally dependent they become on the perception of others. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. The strategist understands that public appearance is a tool, not an extension of the ego. Think of someone financially strong who continues to frequent ordinary places, speaks normally, and avoids unnecessarily displaying wealth. Many underestimate them, and that's excellent for them, because underestimated people face less resistance, less demands, less sabotage, less social pressure. Machiavelli would call this the appearance of virtue, appearing harmless while building real strength. And perhaps one of the greatest advantages of this is psychological. Those who don't need to maintain a persona live lighter lives. There is no anxiety to impress. There is no constant need for approval. While some spend energy maintaining an artificial image, the strategist directs energy towards expanding wealth, building assets, and strengthening freedom. A quiet investor might be accumulating positions in companies like Berkshire Hathaway or Visa, while socially appearing just another ordinary person. And that creates an absurd, invisible advantage. But the war of perception goes beyond hiding money. It involves mastering human emotions without needing to engage in direct conflict. The strategic man understands that many battles are won before they even begin. The calculated use of force includes knowing when not to show any force at all. Because the more predictable someone seems, the less resistance they encounter. And this applies to business, relationships, and money. Virtu and Fortuna walk hand in hand here again. Luck favors those who manage to advance without provoking unnecessary attacks. It's almost like moving pieces on a chessboard where no one notices the game is happening. While most people live trying to be seen, admired, and validated, the strategist accumulates something much rarer: silent peace. And perhaps that's the most uncomfortable part of all, because in the end, true wealth has never been related to excessive luxury. It has always been related to autonomy, emotional control, and invisible freedom. The problem is that almost everyone has heard this at some point, but continues to live exactly the same way. And it is in this distance between understanding and action that entire lives end up being wasted. There's a silent scene unfolding every day that almost no one notices. People waking up early, rushing non-stop, accumulating debt, trying to appear successful, while remaining emotionally trapped by the same old fear. Fear of lacking, fear of failing, fear of not being admired. And perhaps the hardest part is realizing that many of them will continue like this for the rest of their lives, not because they lack intelligence, but because they never learned to see wealth in the right way. Machiavelli understood that power rarely belongs to the loudest. It belongs to the most strategic, to those who can control their impulses, to those who understand true human nature, to those who learn to build in silence while the rest of the world is distracted trying to impress strangers. The problem is that knowledge without action becomes mere intellectual entertainment, and many people consume content about money the same way they watch movies. They feel momentary emotion, but continue living exactly the same way the next day. So the real question isn't whether these strategies work, The question is, will you have the psychological courage to apply them while everyone else does the opposite? Because building invisible wealth requires something rare, enduring appearing ordinary while building something extraordinary. It requires saying no to immediate pleasures. It requires accepting that perhaps no one will notice your progress at first. It requires operating like a ghost while strengthening your silent fortress. And that's not easy, especially in a world where everyone has been trained to show off, consume, and compete all the time. Politics guided by reality, not ideals. The strategic man understands that freedom is worth more than appearance, that peace is worth more than status, that emotional control is worth more than public validation. And perhaps that's exactly why so few people truly get rich. Because getting rich isn't just a financial matter. It's a psychological war against impulses, ego, and the constant need for approval. Now look at your own life with brutal honesty. How many financial decisions have you made trying to impress someone? How many times have you sacrificed future freedom for immediate pleasure? How many opportunities have you missed because you were too worried about appearing successful prematurely? And most importantly, if your income stopped today, would your life continue standing or would it silently crumble? These questions are unsettling because they force someone to step out of character and face reality. But that's exactly where true transformation begins. The end justifies the means, and perhaps it's time to start using smarter means. So write in the comments, which of these principles resonated with you the most? Which one did you realize you never truly applied? I want to know because often admitting this publicly is the first step to change. And if you want to continue learning about strategy, money, silent power, human nature, and the principles that truly move the world, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because while most remain distracted trying to appear rich, a select few are learning to become truly free.